Welcome to Universal Man, where we turn your flight into fight so that you can master yourself, conquer your goals, and become a man that you admire. My name is Mark Weppett, and I am here to help you sharpen your masculine edge. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to conquer your complacency. This is a topic that I talk about a lot on here, but I think it's so important. I want to look at this idea of complacency on a deeper level. I want to look at it from a few different lenses, and hopefully it'll help you understand how you can break free from the prison of your own comfort and live as the man that you really want to be. So the three different levels that I want to look at complacency on are a scientific level, a kind of experiential level, and then I also want to drill down and maybe even look at it from like a archetypal or even spiritual lens. Because I think when you look at it from all these different layers, you realize that, holy crap, this is the thing. This is the big issue that we all have to deal with. So I'll start with the scientific level, all right? There's this idea called homeostasis, all right? And it's a biological sort of thing. And what it is, it's our body's way of trying to regulate itself. Basically, our body wants to reach this state of homeostasis, which means that it's relatively comfortable. It's kind of got what it needs, and it knows what it's dealing with, and it's not stressed out or anything like that, okay? And your body, when it'll fight to maintain this state. Okay. And so this is where we can get into the experiential sort of realm of things, all right? You're encountering homeostasis when you try to adopt a new habit and it feels hard. It's like, I don't want to do it. It's like when you say, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, and then your body's just like, no, thanks. Or like when you get into a cold shower and it feels terrible at first. Okay, that's your body saying, please stop this. I would like to go back to where I was. That was my comfort zone. That was my state of homeostasis. And so this is like what's known as resistance, essentially. Resistance is your body saying, hey, this is taking us out of our comfortable state. Let's go back to the comfortable state. And this is essentially like the enemy of the modern man, because our homeostasis is programmed to work in a much more primitive environment, okay? Like our hunger cues, for example, our comfort cues, our things like that, those all work in a very primitive environment, all right? So it's like, the person back who was a hunter-gatherer, when they were hungry, chances are they were really hungry. Their body was saying, hey, you need to get food and nourish yourself, all right? Now, for the modern man, when he gets hungry, it might just be like, oh, my body's used to eating food at this time, so it's, time for my daily cheeseburger, all right? Basically, it's like our instinctual and I guess you could say inherent wiring of our bodies does not make us make the best decisions in our modern world, because there is so much access to comfort that exists, okay? So if we're gonna really, I think, go deep on this idea of complacency and resistance and that sort of thing, it's like, I believe that this is kind of metaphorically Satan. All right. In biblical terms, Satan's the father of lies. He is the king of this world. And I would argue that homeostasis, that's what it is. Okay. It rules this world. It rules our population for the most part. And it's this thing that very much can lie to us all the time. Like, just because something's comfortable, we think it's true because it feels true. And in a sense it is. It's like, all right, yes, my body and my psychology would prefer to stay where I'm at. Okay, but is that actually truth? Do you really want to stay where you're at? Do you really want to stay in your cycle of jerking off and playing video games and going nowhere in life? Chances are, no, you probably don't. That's probably not the actual truth. So that feeling, that resistance really is a lie, a self-deception, a half-truth at best. And so you need to learn how to see it as that. And so, once you start seeing it and you start naming the enemy properly, then you can really do something about it. And so this is what the solution is. You got to break homeostasis. You have to get good at it. You have to, in other words, get comfortable with discomfort. And doing this is an entirely different internal process. It's a different state. You're going from a parasympathetic state, which is your state of homeostasis, to a sympathetic state. I think I got those right. And basically that means that you're flipping a switch in your neurobiology, all right? This switch is either off or on. It's either in your kind of this resting, refeeding, relaxation phase, which we like to kind of stay in and get stuck in, or you're in the kind of the hunting gathering phase where you're getting shit done, okay? And it's two different states, entirely different, and you can either be in one or the other. And so you need to learn how to turn that action stage on, okay? And this experientially is rather uncomfortable at first. There is a big bump of discomfort, and then you adapt to it, and then you're okay. And so we see this all the time. It's like when you've been putting a bunch of stuff off. The hardest part is just starting it, just getting down and doing it. But once you get moving, it's fine. All right. It's like when you first step into a cold shower, it's terrible, but eventually your body kind of adapts and you're all right. Same with like any kind of exercise. You know, when you first start running, after a while, eventually you kind of hit that steady state. It happens with intellectual work. Eventually you fall into that flow state. But there's always this big bump of resistance that you got to get through. And it's hard. It's hard to get yourself to consistently show up to this, but this is the path to getting all that good stuff in life that you want for the most part. It's learning how to step into this state and pursue the things that are uncomfortable but good for you, right? Now, I think that if we're going to blow this up or, drill down or however you want to look at it, I think that this from the Christian perspective, you could call this the way of the cross. This is kind of the idea that Western civilization was built on, is this idea that like, all right, there is this short and painful path, okay? And it's going to hurt. And that's the path, that's the straight and narrow path of goodness, and it's going to take you out of your comfort zone. It's going to force you to break your homeostasis, all right? And you can see this in the biblical story. It's like Jesus, he was out in the desert, right? He was out in the desert, and he was in this state of extreme fasting, okay? And then the devil shows up, So he's in this state of pushing himself, pursuing goodness, and then the devil, homeostasis, shows up, says, hey, why don't we just kind of take things easy? All you have to do is worship comfort, you got to worship me, and then I'm going to give you what you want. All right. And, Jesus says no. And then he has to go through this painful adaptation period of the cross. Okay. I think that's kind of the metaphor here. And if you push through it, if you go all the way through it and you get past that adaptation phase, and eventually you die and you are reborn in a sense. This is the kind of resurrection that happens when you push through, any sort of big challenge in life. It's very, very hard at first, and then eventually you adapt. And you have to learn how to push through those sticking points. So that's kind of the core story here, but there's a little bit more nuance to it, because you can't just take it all on at once. All right. There's this thing that they call allostatic load. All right. And what that means is that your body can only handle stress, for lack of a better term. It can only handle breaking out of homeostasis so much. Okay. And it's kind of context dependent on how much you can handle. Okay. So when you move into that action-oriented mode where you flip that switch in your nervous system and you're running on cortisol and adrenaline and that kind of stuff, your body has finite resources in that state. It's not like an infinite sort of energy, okay? And you got to learn how to turn it on to some extent, but if you turn it on too much and you don't have the right level of motivation and that sort of thing, then you're just going to wear yourself out, you're going to wear yourself down, and you're going to shut yourself down, okay? This is what happens when people get way too overwhelmed, or they really burn themselves out. And this is a real thing. So you can kind of mitigate your burnout by, one, having a really good reason for pushing yourself, okay? Like people who are in a war or fighting for self-defense, or they're, starting something that they're super passionate about, they're going to be able to handle a significant amount more stress than someone who's just kind of attempting something haphazardly. Like if I don't really care, I have a relatively low threshold for comfort. It's just like as soon as it gets uncomfortable, like I don't care about this, I'm going back to my homeostasis. But if I do care about it, if I'm pursuing a big goal or doing something important to me, then you can take on much more. So part of this is balancing, setting reasonable goals that don't overwhelm you too much, but then also making sure that they're big enough to entice you. And I've been talking about this kind of stuff recently in some of my other videos, but I think it bears repeating within this context. And so archetypally, you can think about the story of Icarus. All right, Icarus. I think he was with his dad, and they were trying to escape this island, and so they made these wings. Okay, and they were like, I think feathers like put together with wax or something like that. And if he flew too high, like his father warned him that if he flew too high, then the sun would melt the wax and he'd fall. Or if he flew too low to the ocean, well, the salt would gum up the wings and then he would also fall. And so he started flying, he got real hyped, and he was just having so much fun that he just kept going higher and higher until, his wings melted, and then he crashed and, wasn't good. So that's what I think happens when people start taking on too much. They feel that jolt of energy, of novelty, of pushing themselves, and then they end up taking on more than they can actually adapt to, and then their nervous system crashes and their goals kind of go out the window. And this sucks. This is not an ideal situation by any means, right? But on some, like the other kind of, I would say, archetypal story that lines up with this would be the story of like the dark night of the soul. Okay. And so this is a different sort of thing. Instead of just being overly ambitious, it's kind of just like life's dealt you some shit. Okay. Or it's like you're pursuing something that's so challenging that there's no way around it other than trying to basically passing through this dark valley, neurologically speaking. Okay. And so this is something that I went through during various stages of my own life, where it was like, all right, if I really wanted to be the person that I wanted to be, then that meant facing some very, very uncomfortable realities and living in them and having no power over them, really. Just having to, like one of them was when I was quitting porn. It was just like, all right, well, in order to quit porn, I was going to have to face all these withdrawal symptoms. And I did it, but man, there was no way around it. That was just more stress than my system could handle. And so I became kind of depressed. I was down. I was just like overwhelmed. And that's just the price to pay sometimes. And you have to recognize, when is that what's going on? Because if you enter into that state, well, there's not much else you can do. Okay. You're really kind of limited in terms of what kind of progress you can make, what kind of satisfaction you can have in life, and that sort of thing. But in certain situations, it's very much worth that price to enter into that dark place of allostatic overload. And so the power here is really just being able to label what's going on, to know what's going on, so that you can either push through or pull back. All right, because if you don't understand what's going on inside of you, it's so easy to just get confused and dissuaded by the way that you feel. And so the really competent person, they learn how to manage these aspects. They learn how to build up their tolerance to stress and discomfort. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but partially it's just a matter of engaging in some kind of discipline, engaging in ascetic disciplines, training your mind, training your body, that kind of stuff. That'll increase your capacity to do it. The other thing is you recognize, all right, well, if I only got a finite amount of stress that I can take on, well, I want to cut out all the extra stress that I don't need in my life. And for most people, there's a lot of extra stress that we create for ourselves or that we allow to weigh us down. If you have a little unaddressed thing, maybe it's a certain relationship, maybe it's a certain habit, maybe it's a lifestyle choice or whatever, that creates a lot of stress for you. Well, that's robbing your bank of power, essentially. That's like a thing that's saying that, all right, well, maybe you have like a relative or something, or a friend who constantly is bringing you down. Okay. And maybe they're not the best person to be hanging around with. And because of this, they're like robbing like 15% of your energy each week. And because of that, you can't put that toward goals you really care about. So you have to cut out all that crap. You got to build yourself up. You got to get stronger. But then you also have to know when to push yourself, when to step out into that chaotic realm, when to step out into that place that turns on that fight or flight response, and then go with the fight response. And that's only really going to happen when you pick goals that mean something to you, that really challenge you and offer a great reward. So hopefully you found this insightful and interesting. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like, please subscribe, and stay sharp. I will see you in the next one.